Hello and welcome to episode 268 of Checkpoint Chat. My name is Alessandro Barberos and I'm joined by a beautifully lit Matthew Figuera.
I'm living for this glow up era that I'm busy enjoying right now. But
Who needs studio lighting when you get one sunny day in London?
It's true. As I said to you before we started recording, though, there's a very slim chance, based on how long this episode goes for, that I might have to get up and pull the blinds shut because the angle of the sun to where I'm seated in summer, in winter, no problem. The sun doesn't exist, okay? And even when it does exist,
No, we know that.
it's sets out of frame. You know, I don't even see it out my window in winter. But come summer, as the days get longer, it just pans around in the afternoon, and we're getting to that middle point now where it just hits me in the corner of my eye as it's setting.
But, you know, the pain is worth it because that lighting, damn.
The lighting's good, but the moment, oh my gosh, I'm going to pull the blinds shut and put the lights on, and then I'm going to look like you, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, listen.
It's just not going to look
It is good. Already, I mean, it's 20 past 6 p.m. here because we are recording out of step again. It is dark. It is getting, it is April in a week. We are getting to that winter season. I know now when I get up in the morning to go to gym, it is actually still pitch dark by the time I leave home, which is like super not fun because I don't like driving when it's pitch dark. But yeah, and it hasn't got colder, which is good.
Just hang on to that till I get there, please.
Oh, it's a nice temperate. It's like I'm still in a t-shirt, you know what I mean? But I'm also not sweating. So this is perfect for me. It is at that point though where if you work in an air-conditioned office, it is too cold.
Oh no.
Where it's like I need a hoodie in an air-conditioned office, but then when I go outside, I'm like cremating. So yeah, well listen, those are the only two states of existence. It's frozen or cremation, one of the two.
It's true.
There is no in between.
I hate is it a paradox? It's not a paradox. It's that thing of when it's cold. I know I'm not alone in this. It's very, very common when it's cold to look up at someone and say, man, I wish I could do with a bit of summer right now. And then when it's too hot, look at that same person and say, man, I could do with a bit of winter right now. We are now in...
Definitely not a paradox, but I can't think of what that's actually called.
We're in the sweet middle spot right now where...
We are.
Even like on Tuesday, I cycle to the office, okay? In summer, it is hot. You'll sweat. Doesn't matter how gentle you pedal those little legs. The sun beats down on you and you're going to sweat a little bit. In winter, it's cold.
Of course, yeah.
And in winter, it's fine. Like, it's cold to get on the bike, but when you're cycling, you actually, you warm up. It's all good, okay? We're in that sweet spot now where you can go out, not layered, and you can pedal comfortably. You don't just drown. So we should just put this moment in a time capsule and just live this day or this season forever.
Who knew that like
between
autumn and spring, really good seasons? Although I guess your spring is really, really nice there because it actually doesn't feel like summer. I feel like spring has been eradicated here. There is no spring. It is just like winter, and then one day it is 30 degrees and it doesn't stop. That's just what summer is now, and it's horrendous.
Yeah. I don't want to speak too soon,
just not fun.
But spring, I mean, we know it's early days of spring. Now we're having a few nice days, but there are times when it is shit. It's still cold. It's rainy. It's a bit gloomy. Now, it's the dream. Blue skies outside. A bird shat on the window, square in the middle. Don't know how. Just dive bombed the window as it was landing on the roof, but I've got like such a good view out here. We've got to enjoy it.
But that's an important indicator of the weather too. The birds aren't icicles on the power lines. So, yeah, nature is healing.
Nature's healing. The pigeons have an agenda against my window, apparently.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. I mean, rather that than it being so cold outside, they can't have an agenda because they
only
are
way
dead.
This could have happened is this pigeon was flying at speed to land on the roof and just let one loose before it landed. Have you
never had that urge though? You're running towards your bathroom and you just have to let one loose? Like, come on.
Yeah, my neighbor's like, damn, these pigeons, was actually me.
That either your neighbor has no perception of what a pigeon shit should look like,
Damn, this
or
pigeon
that
was
is a
super
very,
ill.
very tiny leak, put it that way, you know. My God. Let's check my chat, talk about video games and pigeons, I guess.
We'll title that segment Dive Bombing Poops.
I have a title for the episode. It's great.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yeah, we are busy recording an episode kind of like just randomly in the middle of the week because, like we mentioned previously, we are both going to be traveling quite soon. And so the odds of us getting an episode out over the next couple of weeks pretty slim, unless the stars align and we can do like maybe one episode in April, but there's like no promise of that happening.
Miracle
So
occurs.
yeah, which is a bummer because there's a lot of games coming out in April. Like there's already, South of Midnight is kind of coming soon. Expedition 33, whatever is out pretty soon. There's something else in April. Anyway, there's stuff, and we'll only be able to chat to it a bit later this month when we actually get to it. But yeah, at least we can get this one out here. Speaking of games with 33 in the title, though. 33 Immortals? Is that it?
33 Immortals. It's a very weird
I knew it had
coincidence,
33.
actually.
Yeah, who knew that there would be 2 games with 33 in the title? How does this happen?
Literally every number at your disposal, and you happen to line up on the
and
the
within
same
weeks
two.
of each other, and both on Game Pass. Like, what is happening here? Crazy.
Yeah, they were in the same building, and I swear one overheard the other. It's like,
They're like, damn, 33 is a
33,
great number.
solid
Holy
number,
shit.
yeah.
Yeah. So 33 Immortals, this is a game that was revealed actually quite some time ago. And I think the reason it caught both of our interests at the time was because of the developer. It is, what is it, Lotus?
Thunder Lotus, I think.
Thunder Lotus, that's the one. Thunder Lotus, the developers of Spiritfarer, which I think we both are quite big fans of. Really like cozy sim-like game, which also had some light platforming and really, really destroyed the emotions. Very sad and moving story. This game is not that by any stretch of the imagination.
Could not have imagined a more different game. I mean, visually, you can see in terms of the colors and sort of style. Yes, okay, it's an overlap with Spiritfarer. Like even then, like it's. I think if you looked at this without having played Spiritfarer, you'd have no idea. But in terms of what the game is, not a cozy sim boat riding platforming game. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean,
yeah, I think it shares a lot of visual language with Spiritfarer. It almost looks like hand-drawn animation style. Like there's definitely a lack of fluidity to the animations, but it looks distinct in that manner. But before we get to that, 33 Immortals, I think the sort of high-level pitch of this game is Thunder Lotus's attempt to kind of distill the thrill of a raid, like a World of Warcraft or a Destiny raid, but without a lot of the fluff in and around those raids. So a lot of the complexity stripped out and a lot of the time commitment stripped out as well. Because, I mean, Destiny raids are like, at least when I played them, they were multi-night affairs. Like you'd play 2-3 hours a night and you'd do that like 4 or 5 times before you clear a raid. It's a lot of time for a raid. This one is almost, well, it is more roguelike in nature. So each raid, so to speak, is a run in a traditional roguelike, and it kind of lasts around the same amount of time. I think about like, they can last like a couple of minutes, they can last an hour. I don't think they go much beyond that, at least in my experience. But essentially, you start a run and you are plopped into this like big open map, which is a big PvE space. And there you are matched with up to 32 other players, so 33 players in a server. And in the zone, you kind of run around, kill enemies, you gather resources, but your primary objective is to complete these 12 dungeons called torture chambers, I think they're called, which are like very small 6-man combat arenas. And once you do that, then you unlock a bigger combat arena that everyone kind of needs to clear, and then you face the sort of boss of the map you're on, and that ends your run. And then you can go again, or you can go to higher tier, or that's the kind of like basic progression of things. But if you die, your run is over, and when you die, the number of players in that server goes down by 1. You can never, as far as I understand it, when 33 players are matched, once someone dies, that it isn't filled by another player. So it's almost like each run itself is also shared by every other player, and your success depends on you working with them to get through that run. As a concept, super, super interesting. I think it's a really cool mix of 2 very different ideas. What is your take on how it kind of flows so far?
I mean, so just to recap, this is it's a game preview. It's early access, so there's still a long way to go, I think. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, there's a long way to go before it's actually released, just because there is lots of room for polish, and I think they are still going to add content and weapons and. But the handful of hours I've played, maybe 4, potentially 5, I really like it. I think when I started, first of all, when I heard about this game, 33 Immortals, I didn't quite get the raid nature of it. Maybe I just didn't read the box carefully, but I was very confused by, you do a run with 32 other people. And I was like, that's very strange. I can't wrap my head around it. Like, how does that work? But having played it now and seeing how that, quote unquote pitch or what it says in the box come to life as you've just described it, I really like it. I think it's a nice bite-sized way to enjoy, that sort of high you would get from doing a raid, where it is this lead up to this ultimate big boss that you fight with a whole lot of other players. You get to enjoy the spectacle of that without doing, like you said, a Destiny 3-day commitment.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a many hour commitment. I do think, like, again, early days, it feels like there are still plenty things that they can, tweak and refine under the engine. But that said, I think the foundation's very solid. I really, really I've enjoyed the time I've played it, and I'd be very keen to see, how does this game change? I mean, as a good example, maybe we're deviating a bit, but there's a dash in the game, like any good roguelites. You were saying to me, I think when you started playing, you're like, the dash feels a bit off. And then we spoke a bit before the show, and I said, there's a bit of a delay, but you kind of get used to it. And then you told me, actually, the dash had twice the cooldown when you first started playing. I was like, okay, that seems hardcore. And it just shows that there's a lot of room for them to figure out how to get the feel of this game down.
Yeah, I think if I was to kind of talk about like my biggest criticism of the game currently, it is just that I think the combat itself needs some refinement. It's not bad. It just doesn't feel that put together, so to speak. It's difficult because you look at a game like this, the camera perspective, the sort of style of the game, and it's very difficult to divorce it from other games of this kind, especially something like Hades, where the combat is top notch. It is like beautifully balanced. It feels really good. And I think this just has a ways to go to getting to be of that caliber. When I was playing it, I played it just before it launched. The dash was like completely ridiculous. It was just so long between dashes, and like you said, the patch came out on the day this actually came out to everyone and had radically changed it. So it is good to see that there's a willingness to actually dabble with core things quite drastically, because I think that's what this period is needed for. This early access, they really need to like experiment with things, get feedback quickly, iterate, do this rapidly, not like draw these things out. The other thing that kind of bugs me about the combat is, okay, so this game you're playing with up to 32 other people. It is incredibly cooperative focused. Like, I don't know if you tried kind of just wandering around the world alone, but
Oh
you
yeah.
just get smoked so quickly.
No,
You
not even that.
cannot.
It just takes so long to kill an enemy.
Yeah, exactly. They are tuned for more damage. You just do not output enough damage to kind of like carry yourself alone, which is good. I mean, if you're going to try and replicate a raid experience, the core distillation of a raid is teamwork. I think right now your contribution to the team is determined by the weapon you select, because that determines like, are you just doing raw damage with a big greatsword, or are you using a magical staff to like slow enemies, or are you using a sort of bow thing to attack at range, stuff like that. I think the weapon choices are quite limited now, and so the sort of like team synergy doesn't feel like it's really there. I just feel like, oh, I've got the bow, I do bow damage. I'm not really trying to synergize with other people on my team. It's also really difficult to kind of tell what other people are doing because it's just so effects heavy, especially in the torture chambers, which are very small and condensed combat arenas. It's like, I cannot figure out what's going on half the time. There's just so much happening on screen. But the real problem I have is that no matter what weapon you pick, because of the way it needs to work with other players, each weapon feels almost like incomplete in a way because it's not a full suite of abilities. So it's almost like taking a single player game of this again, like a Hades, and saying, cool, instead of having all of the abilities you'd have with a single weapon in Hades, you've got maybe a quarter or a third, because actually those other ones need to be made up by other players.
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, I logically get that, but it just makes me feel very limited in the things I can do in combat. And because of that, just feels very repetitive at the moment. I don't know if you have a different perspective
No,
on
no,
that.
I agree with you. It's a thing of, and sorry to keep comparing to Hades. It's just it's so similar. I don't know what it is about it, but it does remind me so much of Hades. Maybe it is the demons and whatever you're fighting, the perspective, the style.
I mean, you're trying to fight your way out of hell, so it's pretty on the nose
pretty on
sometimes.
the nose. You're right.
Yeah.
But it is a thing of the weapons almost feel one-dimensional. So all of them, that they've got variation. It is like, so if you're watching the footage, I'm playing with the daggers. So pushing my one attack button just does normal attack. I can hold it in to do like a charge attack, and then there's a little meter that fills up that when it's full, I can do like a launch in the air to do lots of damage. And all the weapons have that sort of system. It is, there's a meter you can fill and you can expend it as a special attack. But what I think the game's lacking is that even when you do these torture chambers, you get these very important, I don't know if they're called, well, I don't know what they're called, like trinkets or items you pick up that will give you like a flat bonus. So, for example, you'll pick up a glove that's like, cool, you do 20% more damage. It's just fixed. I picked up a good one the other day. It's like you heal for 1% of your health every 5 seconds, but it's all passive. There's nothing active. What I think could maybe fix that, I mean, again, this is a sort of thing, a sort of feedback that maybe other players have, maybe they don't. But what I like about roguelites is this thing of, you can, even when you choose a weapon, you'll get certain things or buffs in a run that will change how that weapon works. There's just none of that at the moment. So, for example, imagine you're playing with a bow in this game and you pick up an item in a torture chamber. It's like, cool, your bow now shoots 3 arrows instead of 1. It's that sort of thing, those sort of changes that I think it's just severely lacking, which makes it feel very one-dimensional, even though it's not. Like, it's this, you've actually hit the nail on the head. It is, all the weapons are there, but they're all broken up across different players, you know. In my head, the way to address it or just make it feel more engaging is this thing of like, well, can we have maybe some kind of weapon modifiers? I don't know if it's a thing of items you pick up in your run or things you can do before you go into the run that you can sort of tweak these certain things or make it feel different. That to me feels a bit lacking. I don't know if that kind of aligns with what you're saying, but I don't know if it is one for one.
No, I think we're on the same page then. I think it's a tough problem because I think it would be easier to make all of these weapons fully fleshed out, but then the balance of that while playing with other people becomes a problem. Like, your enemies need to be challenging enough to this wide array of abilities that everyone can kind of pull off at once. So again, I think this being in an early access state is probably good, because I think they are going to take a lot away from this. This is the sort of thing that needs a lot of play testing. I mean, you look at a Hades that goes through a lot of that. I mean, you haven't played it, but Hades 2, when it launched in early access and where it is now, are two vastly different experiences in terms of combat, just because of how much they've chopped and changed. And I think that is the approach that needs to be had here as well. With the gear thing, it's weird because it's not like gear. I think trinkets was the right word that you used, where you just pick it up and it sits in the like left of your screen, and you can only have like 8 at a time or whatever. The most I've seen in terms of reactivity is you've also got these 3 attributes, which is, I think, attack, life, and
it's empathy.
Empathy? Yeah. I don't really know what empathy does.
I
think it like
but I don't.
I think it increases your rate of the getting that purple resource, which you use to upgrade these 3 attributes anyway. Maybe that was my assumption.
Well, we should probably look this up. My assumption was that again, if you're watching the footage, you might notice in the top right, there's like a co-strike crit chance that pops up. So the reason the game works with multiple the reason it's better to work as a group is because if you're attacking an enemy alone, you just do fixed damage. But if you're attacking with other people, you build up a bar that means you've got a better chance of critting, which means you're doing more damage. So I thought that the empathy stat was maybe tied to the damage you do with your crits, or the rate at which that bar builds up. I don't actually know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I guess this is another thing that there are tutorials in the game. There's like a almost like a tutorial combat arena, but even that, it only has the basics there. Like the other stuff, the advanced tactics, it just says coming soon.
It's like in development. It's like, okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of like kind of sussing things out as you play. But yeah, back to the thing, the trinket that kind of affected that was, I picked up one that was like, for every point of, I think it was every point of health or every point of empathy, you get
half of something else.
Half for another thing. And I was like, oh, cool. Then I'm just going to pummel points into this one thing so I can, get 2 stats at once, essentially. And those stats are where the roguelite elements like feature most. Like at the end of each run, you lose all your gear, you lose all the points in those tiers, like the health, attack, and empathy. The only things that you kind of retain are passive bonuses that you upgrade through doing something called feats, which are kind of like small challenges that you complete with every run, like kill X number of enemies or use this weapon to deal X number of damage or whatever. And this seems to be the game's play for longevity, because there are so many feats to unlock. And it's very explicitly stated that the end of the game is you basically completing all these feats and getting some sort of crown. I'm not entirely sure what it's called. It, even from the small bits I've played, that seems like it's going to take a long time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. At the moment, there's 4 weapons based on the layouts of the base camp. They've got 4 more planned. Looks like there's going to be 8 in total.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's feats tied to each of those weapons, and then there's feats outside of those weapons. And those like, let's say the feats for the daggers, there's also tiers you've got to work your way through. So there's, I think it is this weird thing where I think they are just ramping up these numbers, all these feats, to draw out the playtime that people will commit to the game. Because by doing feats and unlocking resources, it is a thing of like, oh, cool, now I've done this. I can start, if I start a run at 100 health from day one when I launch the game, if I do enough feats, I can start my next run with 130 health and do more damage. And it helps you just be more efficient as you play. But that's what I was saying to you as well, that's probably my biggest concern with the game, where I really like what I've played and what I am playing, but I do wonder what the longevity is like. Well, I want to keep, let's say I do enough runs and I beat the final boss 3 times, and it takes a few hours to do that, so 10, 15, 20, whatever hours. Am I going to keep wanting to play. Beyond that, like I don't know.
Yeah, it's strange. I think it's a difficult question to answer with the game being in early access now, because there's definitely, I wouldn't say very little content, but there's not a lot. There's, I mean, technically only the first 2 worlds out of 3 that you can visit.
Oh, is the third not available? I didn't actually realize
I don't
that.
think the third's. I don't think the third is available, as far as I know. And even then, it just seems like a lot of systems are still waiting to be put online. So it is cool that you can basically run through the first 2, I think, and see their bosses. And I think getting to one of the bosses at all is kind of a big feat. Like the fight is very climatic and cinematic, and it's cool, especially when a lot of players survive and get to that battle. It looks pretty sick. So again, I think there's just a hell of a lot of promise with this game. I really like the concept of it. And I understand the ideas they're going for. Like, for instance, I'm looking at the footage now, and I forgot about the ability you have where each weapon has a sort of special, and that special you can plop down on the floor, and it puts like a ring around you and 2 other rings that 2 other players need to stand in for the ability to activate.
Yeah.
It's like, that's cool, but the actual placement of that glyph is super strange. It's like blocked off by so many things, and it just feels really cumbersome in a game that is way more fast paced in that regard. So I ended up actually forgetting to use it a lot of the time. I also found that only one of them was really that useful, and that was that sort of cloud thing that slows every enemy inside. The other ones just seem pretty difficult to aim, put it that way, especially with the way that you put the glyphs down. So it's these things that I think need to be finessed a little bit, but I do think they have the time to do so. And it's a game that I think I want to check back in every now and then and be like, oh, okay, this has progressed quite well.
Yeah.
This could be something I could see, myself pouring quite a few hours into, because I think it's a very frictionless multiplayer experience. You jump into a run almost as if you're starting a run in a roguelite, and you just matched up, and everyone has a common idea of what they want to do, and there's no complexity in the actions you need to do. You just kind of need to fight. And I think there is value in something that straightforward as well.
Yeah, I mean, that brings me to my next point, where again, when I first saw this game, I was a bit confused, thinking 33 players in a run, that doesn't make sense. I mean, this game's in early access, and matchmaking, it's instant. I haven't had any moments where I'm waiting, or there's a lack of players, so that's good to see. I just hope it's something that will last, because a run does take a while. It's not they have to have a fair number of players to fill these lobbies, and the fact that the game is it's built on this specific level having 33 players, you can't just go, oh, there's 20 players, let's just get this run going. So it's good though.
No, it is cool. It is cool.
I think the just like my concluding thoughts is the foundation's there. I'm enjoying what I'm playing. I'm very keen to see where development goes. And to your point earlier, Hades 2, where it started versus where it's going to end up, completely different. I don't know where this game's going to end up. The way it is now, I'm really like, oh yeah, like I can see the potential here. Very interesting
definitely,
idea. It's like I'm trying to think who pitched this. It's like, cool, we want to put raids and roguelites together, but with 33 players in a row. we had this
such an odd number as well.
Next door talking about 33. It seems like a good number.
Yeah. They're like, we're actually thinking of just 6, but now that we've heard the number 33 down, it's sort of like that Inception thing where an idea was planted in their head and they just couldn't get it out, Yeah. I do think this game has a lot of promise, just because of how novel it is. And I just hope that over time it is the sorts of things that bug me are kind of like ironed out, or there's just good enough community feedback to drive the game in a direction that I think most players think is the right direction. That's out on Xbox Game Pass now. You can actually give that a go. I would recommend giving it a shot. It's
PC Game Pass.
It's just neat. It's a cool thing, if anything.
Yeah. Yup, yup, yup.
Yeah. I think we're gonna check in again on some Assassin's Creed Shadows, because you have now actually properly finished it, and I have played a lot more than just kind of the opening.
Mm.
And I think your thoughts have largely stayed the same, but mine have radically changed, I think, compared to when we initially recorded.
Yeah,
For the better.
I'm very interested to hear your thoughts because I think the last time we spoke, I mean, we spoke for a long time. I mean, we spoke for an hour.
We did. We did.
We had a lot to say in the game. I think I came off, not that you were negative, but I think I came off more largely positive. I was enjoying the game. I think whereas your criticism was, it's Ubisoft games and how they've sort of led Assassin's Creed is just not your vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was quite negative there. And I think a lot of that was still coming off of the bat of the, I think, excruciatingly long opening to that game. I think
mm,
I almost cannot believe that that wasn't picked up in some sort of way. Like, this is a very stagnant and slow and drawn out
mm,
start to a game, especially for a series that has been criticized for that exact thing multiple times
yeah.
over the years. Once I got over that, the game, like sort of when you get unleashed on the open world, it's still kind of very handholdy, but then after a couple of missions, like one or two, you start getting the sense of, oh, okay, I'm in this zone of the map. Each zone
Mm,
is demarcated according to like a max level you should be, even though the enemies scale with you, which weird. Yeah, I don't understand that.
mm,
But once you kind of get unleashed onto there, it's like, oh, okay, I see the sort of hooks that are going to
mm.
pull me into this game. And a lot of that comes down to just moving around this world as now
No, yeah.
she's just remarkable and so much fun to move around as.
Mm,
Like, her parkour skills are just super, super fun, super fast. I think there's more nuance to climbing in this game than there has been in at least the last couple of Assassin's Creed games, which I
mm,
welcome. I know some people might not share that opinion, but I kind of like when I have to think a bit when I'm climbing things rather than every little thing has a handhold that I can just scurry up.
mm.
It reminds me a lot of the older games, so I'm appreciative of that. And I think the grappling hook is a really cool addition because it
Mm.
takes out some of the tedium,
So
especially with the
good.
architecture of the time. Like, it
Yeah.
lets you get up to places a bit quicker, and they just make sense, put it that way.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I just like moving around this world now and kind of getting distracted by certain things that I come across. There's obviously I think there's still a lot of fluff. I think there's a lot of
mm,
quantity again over quality, but especially those, I don't know what they're called. They're sort of like the little enemy bases
mm.
that you go into, and you have to assassinate like a number of samurais in them
It's just like
to
a
unlock a
castle, like
chest.
a fort or something.
Yes. Yeah, like the fort. Like, I love those. That is
Yeah.
like peak Assassin's Creed joy to me in this game. It is
Mm,
like you've got this really large, some of them,
mm,
bases, and you've got to first suss out where these samurai are and kill them so you can get a pretty decent reward at the end. And sometimes the reward doesn't justify the actual time I spend doing them. But it's just such a fun activity that every time I come across one, even if it's on the way to another mission, I'm like, yeah, I should probably just take an hour to do this thing because it's
mm.
just cool. And it turns out that most of them are at the center of like your synchronization point, so it's fairly easy to find a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's good. I That is the part of this game that I'm really enjoying, especially with how stealth focused Now's gameplay is.
Mm,
I think it feels cool. It's way more stealthy than I think the series has been in a very long time.
mm.
I still get very annoyed that I can't like assassinate enemies because they're of a higher arbitrary fucking number level to me.
Yeah.
That is the sort of stuff when I talk about the series moving away from what I like, that's the sort of shit that I don't like. Just
Mm.
because it, it just doesn't feel like that sort of game. It just doesn't make sense. It feels so arbitrarily put in to limit you because of role
RPG.
playing
Yeah.
systems that don't need to be here. Like, if if this sort of gameplay could be divorced from role playing entirely. I think this would
Mm.
be a much better game, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because I don't think the quest for gear and loot is the thing that is making me do these activities. I'm doing them because they're fun.
Yeah.
I'm not like, oh, I feel underpowered,
Oh,
or
yeah.
oh, I want this piece of gear. It's like, no, actually working through the space is just a hell of a lot of fun that is slightly hampered by me being reminded that everything happening behind me is like stack based and it's
Yeah.
limiting the things that I can do. So that is just like, I do think they're getting less and less. They're not as deep as they used to be in terms of role playing, and I feel like they
Mm.
are slowly moving in a different direction, and I welcome that. I just kind of wish it was here, because the things
Just,
I do love a lot
yeah.
would, I think, be made better if that stuff wasn't there. But overall, I think I'm having a much better time with it. I'm like actually playing it quite actively. I just got to Yasuke. I think I was like 14 hours in, which is quite similar to you, I think.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like playing as him. It just lays
Yeah.
bare a lot of the issues I have with the combat.
Mm.
But other than that, I'm having a really good time.
You'll find your balance. Like I think I can't remember if I've said to you, if I said in the last time we spoke about it. My balance was playing as Nawe, so I blanked the name, Nawe for the most part, and then when it came to doing those enemy fortresses, there were just times I was like, yeah, I just want to brute force my way through all of this. So just switch to him, and then you can just, melt down through enemies. And that was good fun for me. But to go back to what you said about, assassinations and the whole RPG thing, it makes me think, so I've never played The Division, but it makes me think so much of The Division, where I think at the time when RPGs were still kind of new and, being injected into every bloody game under the sun, it was baffling to me to see The Division. It's like, I'm watching somebody play it and they're getting headshots, but this person's not dying. It's just damage numbers above. It did not make sense in my head. I'm like, this is a hyper realistic cover based shooter, but it's all just comes down to raw numbers, and it's the same problem here, where it is like, I'm launching from the sky onto this enemy and like doing a pip of damage. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But at the very least, if you do want to fix that, I'm sure you've seen there are accessibility settings you can flip on to put on one kill assassinations if you want to streamline the game like that. So I guess you haven't seen
I'm
that.
doing that immediately the next time I play. Like immediately.
I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
Yeah, I don't know where the settings, but I remember seeing it, and I was like, yeah, that's cool that you can have the option. I wish I'd seen that from the get-go, because that's exactly
Oh no,
how I wanna play the
100% I'm
game.
doing that. Yeah, 100%. Because like I find a lot of the friction where I'm in these bases and I can 100% assassinate this dude in one shot, but because I have to assassinate and then he's still kind of got like half health, then it draws in like 10 million other enemies around me, and I'm like, I don't know. Now is not equipped for this shit, and I just don't want to do this. So it's actually quite fun when you end up at a base that is a level lower than you are, and you can actually just instantly assassinate those dudes. Like, it just feels so much better. So that's awesome that's an option. I'm definitely gonna I'm definitely gonna turn that on. Fuck that. That sounds awesome.
This won't apply to you now because you are going to turn that option on, but I was going to say, the longer you play the game, the easier it becomes anyway, because there is part of your skill tree where it's like the assassin skill tree, where I think you can put points into, you remove one extra bar of damage with assassination attempts, and then eventually you get gear that also adds stuff. So you do get to a point where you can just one hit some of the bigger enemies. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. It is that weird thing where I think, like, Noel's right. She also has criticized the game where it's poor design to a point. If a game takes like 10 plus hours to get good, I get giving a game some breathing room for you to get a feel for the systems and all of that. But I think inherently here, with Yasuke so far along and just the way the game's structured, it just takes a while to get going. But when it does, I mean, I enjoyed it. I inhaled my playtime with this. I mean, I rolled credits, I think just shy of 40 hours. I mean, that was like in the space of 2 weeks, which was like unhinged for
Yeah.
me. I mean, I spent
I mean, that's
time
saying a
playing
lot
games, but it's a
considering.
lot. Yeah.
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 I wanted to ask because currently, I'm vibing a lot with the gameplay, and the gameplay loop is what's really keeping me engaged here.
Mm.
The story, I'm not that locked into the story. I just don't find it that interesting. So far, it's like very paint by numbers revenge tale. Like there are
Mm.
X number of enemies who are involved in the syndicate that I want to get revenge on. I
Mm.
think the sort of ending to Act One was like very telegraphed that that was not going to be the person that was at the center
Mm.
of all this. It was like, oh,
What?
okay, yeah. Yeah, it's like,
Gotta
oh,
be
I don't have Yasuke
surprised.
yet, but I'm doing this. Well, there's
Yeah,
only one way
strange.
this could probably go,
Yeah.
Um, does it get any more interesting in your opinion, put it that way?
So it's not spoiler, as far as I'm concerned. But that revenge tale, that plot of you've got to assassinate, what is it, 12 people?
I think it's 12,
12.
12 or
That
10. I'm
that
not
is
sure.
like the majority of the game. Like the entirety of, is it like Act 2 and 3 combined? Like, I don't know, but that is where most of your playtime is going to be, of you finding these people and killing them. So what I
Mm,
said to you in the last time we spoke is like, I want to know, not that I really care for the animus and the overarching Assassin's Creed story, but I do want to know, like, where does this plug in? And that sort
mm,
of stuff is saved like right at the end. Like the last few hours of the game, you're like, oh, okay, like this is what happened and this is how it's happening, whatever. But for the most part, the game is just a straight up, it is a revenge tale of just, righting the wrongs of Japan and the corrupt leadership and
mm.
all of that. So take from that what you will. Enjoying the gameplay, I'm
Yeah,
glad. The story, I don't know. It's,
I guess
yeah.
that's slightly disappointing because if I had to compare it to, I never played much of Odyssey. I played even less of Valhalla, so I can't really speak to their stories. And I know for a fact that Odyssey went in some fucking bizarre places by the end of it because of how it was tying into some animus bullshit. Origins was the last like Assassin's Creed story that I saw through to the end
Mm.
and really, really enjoyed. And what's interesting about that is it's also a revenge story to a degree. Like
Mm.
you start off as Bayek and your impetus is to find this actually very much the same, like this group of people who have done you wrong. They
Mm.
have, if I'm not mistaken, they've killed your child. And so
Yeah.
you're on your own revenge path to kind of like get rid of these people. But it intertwines so well with the kind of fall of Egypt and the introduction of the Roman Empire at the time. I mean, you've got people like um, Julius Caesar and what's his name? Mark, whatever. The person
Ruffalo.
who, yes, definitely Mark Ruffalo, the person who Cleopatra like marries and
Oh,
all of that.
Mark
You've got
Antony.
all of these things happening at the same time, and you are kind of you're kind of injected into that political intrigue. You're very close to a lot of those characters.
Mm.
So there's a lot more than just your revenge tale. And by the end of it, your revenge tale actually wraps up a considerable amount before the actual end of the game. So
Mm.
I was kind of hoping there was something like that here where, yes, it is a revenge story from the get-go, but it evolves into a much wider um, a wider story with more complex motives. But
Mm.
especially after the end of the first act, I was kind of like, oh, okay, we're just trading one bad guy for the next, and he's actually the big bad, and now I just got to
Mm.
kill the rest of the big bads around him. And I was like,
Yes, look, there
no.
are nuances and surprises and things that happen. Um, but yeah, it's. I think if you playing this game for the story, you're playing it for the wrong reasons. And I think going into it, I can't imagine a lot of Assassin's Creed fans are there for the Animus story. I mean, from the get go,
Nah.
you and I have both said, just close your eyes, just ignore the story, and just enjoy the game. And
There are some real Assassin's Creed Animus Law sickos out there that try to make sense of all the fucking threads Ubisoft has
there,
tried to wrangle together over the years.
yeah, there's
It's
there's Animus stuff, yeah, for sure. And I I'm very interested to see more, not because I'm like dying for what's the word I'm looking for? Not conclusions, the wrong word. It's not a resolution. It's not like I'm dying for a resolution or something. I'm just like, well, okay, Animus nonsense. Where are you going next? That's more. That's where I'm coming from, and I think that there is stuff in store for this game. I mean, looking at the track records of, I don't know if Mirage had DLC. I just can't think
I don't think so.
Whereas Valhalla had 2 big sets of DLC, and they're kind of, what was it, 3? There were actually a couple.
I remember the Odin-ish one, like the Norse. You got like godlike powers or some bullshit.
Actual Valhalla. Then there was one set in Ireland, and then one set in Paris or France, if I recall.
Oh wow! Okay.
So there were quite substantial DLC chunks for that game, and this game's definitely going to have, based on how the story ends and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, there's clearly still more to say here, so they're saving it for I don't know what, like a free content drop or future DLC. We'll see. But it's to answer your question, which you asked like 35 years ago, so I rambled on a bit, we both spoke on a bit, is that all the Assassin's Creed Animus stuff, like, it really just happens after you've killed your 12 targets. They like save it for the final act or the last 2 acts. I don't know how it's broken up. But yeah, you've got the good gameplay loop to sustain you, hopefully, to rolling credits.
Yeah, no, I think I'm definitely enjoying it enough to kind of get there. And, you know, because I'm enjoying the systems over, the narrative necessarily, if eventually I burn out, I'm like, I've had my fill of this. I think I can very easily be like, I've had my fun. I do not need to see credits because there's really nothing. Yeah, it's like I can just leave it. You know what I mean? And I think I'm trying to do that more now with games where, like, I had my fun with this. I don't need to finish it. You know what I mean? If I don't feel the impetus to, and I think that's definitely probably going to happen here, because I don't see myself plowing 40 hours in over the next week. And so, will I be playing this in the next 3-4 weeks? Who knows? But right now, I'm having a good time with it, and it's a nice way to kind of like switch my brain off and just enjoy moving around this world and kind of being an assassin again in Assassin's Creed feels really fucking good. You know, I will say that it hasn't been that way in a very long time, that you can actually say you are this sort of assassin.
Yeah.
So it's cool that that's back, and I'm glad that there's a big emphasis on that. And I just hope that is a lesson carried forward, that the game can be that. But I do wonder about, the dual protagonist thing is almost like trying to appease both sides. Like, oh, you can still have a very combat heavy experience similar to Valhalla and to an extent Odyssey, but we have this very, very stealthy focus now. Like, do they continue down the path of giving you the choice, or do they make a hard... To an extent, they kind of did already make a hard choice here, because you play as Nawe for so much of the game. So maybe that is the direction they're going for. And yeah, I'm curious to see that. That is a future of Assassin's Creed that I did not think was being set up when I initially spoke about this a week or so ago. So I'm happy that I'm once again excited to see where it goes from here, rather than being like, well, these games are very clearly not for me anymore. So it did a real 180 on me there.
Yeah, but look, Mirage, I think, was this weird middle ground. It's like, hey, it's a shorter game, more focused on assassin stuff, but it's kind of like a midpoint. It wasn't like a particularly long game or thing. But Valhalla before it, I mean, remember, this is my first Assassin's Creed, so this is me coming onto this franchise going, this has got nothing to do with Assassins. Valhalla for me was a, looking back now, what a baffling design choice, because I think it was literally somebody going like, yeah, let's explore Vikings, cool, what an interesting time in history, and no one in the room going, but what do Vikings have to do with Assassins? Because it's like, they are not at, the Vikings are all about invading and brute force, whereas now Assassin's Creed Shadows in Japan, I can completely see like, yes, I'm a shinobi, I'm a person in the shadows, doing assassination stuff. So Valhalla, I didn't hate Valhalla, but just looking back, I think I grow more bitter on it. I'm like, yes, I don't know what they were thinking with that game. It just feels so, probably the most divorced title from what I understand to be the core Assassin's Creed franchise.
Yeah.
Like the whole premise of what you're meant to be doing. So I'm glad Shadow seems to be, it's not there yet, but it is hopefully heading in that direction. And I do wonder, like you said, I like Yasuke as a character. I really do like him. But a part of me does wonder if Assassin's Creed Shadows would have been okay with just one of them. Whether it's him or her, it doesn't matter. Just an assassin-focused character, and that was it. Because Naoe is very combat competent. Like, yeah, she's not as tanky as Yasuke, but if you get caught out, you can definitely fight your way out of an enemy base. So it just feels weird now having this thing of like, cool, you play as her for the first 10, 14 hours, and now there's this powerhouse Yasuke, and you kind of want to use him, but you don't want to because he's not as good as climbing and stuff. So I don't know. It's a weird design choice.
I do wonder if they tried the approach of, I mean, I can't remember. You've played Witcher 3, right?
Yeah, I played Witcher 3.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. You have some like odd blind spots in your library that I never know if it's like, oh, you've played Mass Effect, of course.
Never
no,
played
I
Mass
haven't.
Effect.
What?
Witcher
like,
3, yes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But in Witcher 3, you have these moments where you play as Ciri, obviously. And she controls, I wouldn't say entirely differently, but she has an entire different moveset to Geralt, and she feels different and whatever. I wonder if initially they did the same with Yasuke, where you played the opening as him, or you played certain moments after that as him. And then through playtesting, they were like, wait a minute, this dude feels fucking cool. Like, he is cool to play as. And they were like, wait, why don't we just do that? And that would explain a lot. Like, it would explain why the first whole act of the story barely features him. Because they couldn't find a way to, like, justify him being a playable character before you get to the moment at the end of Act 1.
Yeah.
It would also explain why it's a bit wonky in changing between them and how they kind of don't really interact all that much, aside from big pivotal points in the story. Like, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this was a decision made well after the initial pitch of the game, and that's totally fine. But whether they do that again, I'm not entirely sure. I think they stumbled into this by accident, and it's cool that, you know, they got a bit more out of a character that they clearly put some time into. I just don't know if I want every other Assassin's Creed to be dual or tri protagonists. I think rather just focus on one and hone that in a bit more.
Yeah, I desperately want a no-clip documentary on the developments of this, because I think there are some fascinating things that happened. Then I'd just love to see, like, what were the reasons behind a lot of these choices, because we can speculate till we die, but we'll never actually know until somebody says, well, actually we did this because, like the fact that you can't.
And poor Daniel Dwyer would have to visit like every single continent under the sun, because have you seen that the credits for this game are 2 hours long?
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't know, but all in all, it is, again, like, I think the best thing I can say about it is that it is I've only played Valhalla, Mirage, and now Shadows, and Shadows is my favorite out of all of them by a mile. So, yeah.
I mean, out of the recent ones, for sure. Like, I was really, really hyped for Mirage, just because the whole pitch of that was like, we are going back to how Assassin's Creed used to feel, more stealthy, more parkour focused, more no fucking numbers on weapons and shit like that. And I was like, hell yeah. Finally, let's go. Let's have these two branching paths of core classic game and RPG nonsense. I'm fine with that. And I think it just ended up being boring, unfortunately. Like, there was nothing fundamentally wrong with it. It was just boring. So I'm kind of glad I don't have to wait for another one of those smaller side stories to kind of get my fix, and Shadows is kind of scratching a lot of the itches I've had. It is very Ghost of Tsushima-like in that regard, and it does make me very excited for Ghost of Yote later this year. Stern competition, put it that way. That is our check-in on Assassin's Creed Shadows. And that's going to do it for this episode. We're going to have to wrap it up a bit quickly today, because A, Matty's still got shit to do,
Got
and
shit to
B,
do.
he is being actually assaulted by the sun in his eyeball right now.
Have you
It
noticed
is
how I've
quite.
just started like
You just started
going
slowly moving
left?
in different areas of the frame
I
because it is
told
actually
you, it's just
killing your
like gonna
eyes.
get me
Yeah,
in the eyeball. Damn it, it's this time of the year.
crazy. Um, that has been episode 268 of Checkpoint Chats. As said at the top of the show, if you somehow missed it, episodes are going to be even more sporadic than normal just over the next month, just because we are both traveling.
Yeah, just for April.
Yeah, just for April, really. We might have an episode here or there, but there's no promising that. That will be like if we manage to do something, not we will do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you do not hear from us for a while, we hope you all stay well, keep playing awesome games as they come out during April, and we'll definitely be back to catch up on a lot of that when we do get back to our regular like routine and schedule.
Programming, yeah.
Programming, indeed.
Nice.
But that's it, episode 268. Thank you so much for supporting as always. And until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.